Hello everyone. So 7 years ago, when I was 19, my parents ordered me to leave and booted me out of the house because they believed it was more necessary for my sister's boyfriend to live with her. I am a 26-year-old female with a 3-year-old older sister named Emily. Emily became pregnant with her boyfriend at the age of 23, forcing her to return to live with us. She had been working for a few months at the time, but she hadn't earned enough money to support a child and live on her own, so she returned home. And about 5 months into her pregnancy, she decided it would be best if her boyfriend moved in with her as well. She believed that having the baby's father present was critical for normal development. Don't ask me about that. I wouldn't have had a problem with it, but she was living with it, so I felt it was an unreasonable request because our house wasn't particularly large, and I wasn't sure if it could handle all of us. I had assumed that my parents would refuse to allow her lover to move in, but I had no clue that they were preparing to agree with her and kick me out instead. A few months after Emily moved in, my parents informed me that they planned to have her boyfriend move in as well, so I would have to give up my room. I was taken aback because I hadn't anticipated it, and I was naive enough to inquire about where I would be staying in the house. Then my parents stressed that they wanted me to leave the house totally because I was 19, and it was time for me to leave the nest. I'd planned to take a gap year, so attending college was out of the question. Apart from that, I could have moved in with my grandparents or friends, but I didn't understand why I needed to leave my place at all. It was my home, not just my sister's, and just because she was pregnant didn't mean she could do everything she wanted without my parents' approval. I attempted to argue with them, but my parents told me that I was an adult, that I needed to cope with life on my own, and that I had no right to feel entitled to live with them anymore, especially when my sister was pregnant and wanted her boyfriend by her side. I tried to explain that she could share her room with her partner, but they said it wasn't possible because she wanted her own place as she grew, and her room was already small. Having her partner move into that room would just make it crowded. Therefore, she preferred that he be in another room. I recommended that he dwell in the living room, but her boyfriend had a back issue, so that was not possible. I was desperate not to go at the moment, so I suggested that I live in the living room instead, but they told me that having someone remain in the living room was inappropriate. They simply refused to listen to me, and it became clear to me after a while that they only wanted me to leave. I absolutely blamed my parents for their behavior toward me, but I also thought my sister was unreasonable and entitled. She wanted her boyfriend to move in with us, but she also wanted him to have his own room, which meant I'd have to move out even though I wasn't ready. I felt bad about it, and I got into a big battle with my family the day I was instructed to leave. I called them all selfish and stated that I never wanted to see them again because they were all filthy, horrible people, and I was ashamed to be related to them. Then I packed everything I owned and contacted a couple of friends to help me move out within the next 4 days. I had spoken with my grandparents, and my father's parents were hesitant to have me live with them, but I don't blame them because my grandfather had always been very unwell, and my grandmother already had a lot on her plate trying to care for him, so I decided to move in with my maternal grandparents, who were upset when they learned why I had to leave my parents' home. They gave my parents a hard time before ceasing to communicate with them. I felt depressed, despite the fact that I had my grandparents and friends by my side. I had always assumed that I had a positive relationship with my parents and even my sister, so I didn't understand why they were treating me this way. But everything became plain to me the day after I departed, when my sister wrote me a letter via one of her acquaintances. I still have that letter because it was so odd, but it stated that the reason she pushed our parents to kick me out of the house was because of her lover. Apparently, she stated that he was a flirt and that they weren't in a committed relationship when she became pregnant. They only made things formal when she discovered she was pregnant, and she was worried that he wasn't completely committed to the relationship. She explained that she had to work hard to get him to agree to move in with her and commit to raising the baby with her. Therefore, she did not want another woman in the house since it would jeopardize the entire arrangement. I couldn't understand Emily's willingness to have a baby with this man, given her obvious insecurity and distrust of him, and the fact that she felt compelled to force me to leave the house so that her boyfriend would not be tempted to flirt or hook up with me was ridiculous. I had half a mind to text her and tell her that she had no self-esteem and that it was terrible that she was still attempting to be with a man like this, and even delivering his baby, but she was obviously not thinking clearly, so I chose to say nothing. Besides, being with a man like this was punishment enough for her, so I wanted nothing to do with her or my family any longer. She lacked self-respect and dignity, and because my parents were so readily swayed by my sister, they made it apparent where I stood with them. I decided that not communicating with them was the best thing to do in this scenario, so I began trying to go on with my life. I had never been very interested in academics, so I decided to take a year off to reflect on what I truly wanted to accomplish with my life. I didn't want conventional 9-to-5 work. I know that seems crazy, but I've always felt that lifestyle would be too confining for me. I'm a self-taught musician who can play both the guitar and the drums. I've been playing since I was 13, so I'd say I'm very excellent. And during my gap year, I knew this was what I wanted to pursue with my life. I wanted to be a musician, and I knew it wouldn't pay well, but it would make me happy, and that was all I wanted. And I hoped that one day I'd be able to achieve success. At the time, I had no idea it would truly come true, at least in part. Initially, I only planned modest gigs, and money was tight. I heavily relied on my grandparents for financial support, and it took me a long time to be able to buy an apartment. And even then, it was a very small one that I shared with a roommate. After that, I started getting slightly more serious gigs until the beginning of this year, when I auditioned for a job with a music producer. And I'm not going to take names, but I got the gig. I'll be playing guitar in a few songs for a film, and I'll be very well compensated for it. I've already received some money in advance and have been able to move into a better place, and the remainder will be paid after the job is completed. After this, I believe I'll be able to acquire even more jobs with the resume I have. Only a few of my friends and grandparents knew about it, and I'm not sure who spoke out of turn, but my parents found out. I haven't even shared any of this on social media yet, since I don't want to discuss it too soon. In the entertainment industry, nothing is truly permanent. 4 days ago, my family discovered where I lived. They arrived at my door. Obviously, they required my assistance because I'm doing well in life right now, and both of my parents have retired, so they need someone to support my sister and her child. I didn't invite them in when they arrived. I was too startled to do anything but look. Anyway, since I couldn't communicate with them, they congratulated me and stated that they were here to make things right with me. Not only because we were family, but also because they needed my assistance. Emily's partner left her 3 years ago, and when they saw that I was working as a guitarist on a film soundtrack, they felt they had to contact me because it was such a big event. They also told me that Emily was trying to keep up with the business she had begun after her boyfriend left, and that both my parents had retired last year, so they needed me to step up and support my sister. They said they hoped I wouldn't turn them away because it had been a long time since we had spoken, and despite all that had occurred, we were still family. Therefore, we needed to be there for each other above all else. That made me giggle, because they had been completely absent from my life. In fact, they had done everything imaginable to avoid having to be there for me. Even now, they were only here because Emily's partner had abandoned her, and she had no one to turn to for assistance. She appeared to be receiving child support, but it was insufficient in the long run. My sister had started a flower store with a friend when her kid was born, but it wasn't doing well just now, so they looked to me for aid. But the situation was so hilarious that I couldn't help but laugh in their faces, especially when I remembered my sister's letter to me the day after I left. She knew all along that she wasn't sure about her connection with her boyfriend, but she chose him over having a solid relationship with me, and look where it got her. So I returned to my house after ordering them to wait outside. I got the letter that I had kept safe and returned it to the lady who had written it, telling her to read it aloud to our parents so they would understand why they had kicked me out all those years ago. Emily turned crimson in the face when she saw it and refused to read it, so I took it from her and read it aloud. After I finished, my parents were both shocked and mortified because they knew they had been duped, and they were so weak-willed that they couldn't differentiate right from wrong. Most of all, they looked to be upset with Emily, since it appeared that she had known all along that he was not the proper guy, but she had chosen to place her trust in him. In doing so, she not only cheated herself out of a stable and secure future, but she also made life tough for our parents, who were now forced to support her. After reading that letter, none of them knew what to say, so I just told them that whatever was going on with them right now, they deserved it, especially Emily, who had known that the guy she had been with was not the right kind of person, but had chosen to sacrifice everything for him. So this was on her right now, and I felt no need to assist her. When I said that, she burst into tears and told me that she had expected me to be more sensitive because she was in love with him and wanted to work things out with him. She just didn't want to take any chances. And she was aware that having me there would be problematic since she didn't want him to be tempted by anyone else. She was willing to confess that she had not been thinking clearly, but that was only because she was expecting a baby, and she wanted to do everything in her power to ensure that her partner stayed with her and did not desert her and their child. But blaming her for her current circumstances was inconsiderate, and she expressed that she expected better. I had nothing to say about it, so I slammed the door shut and told them to go. Since then, I've received a slew of texts from her friends accusing me of being insensitive and claiming that she hasn't stopped crying since I told her that everything was her fault. So, am I in an asterisk hole for telling my sister that it was her own responsibility that her partner abandoned her and her child? Update 1. I have made up my mind. I will not apologise for anything I have stated. The comments made me understand that, while I was attempting to normalise the situation, Emily's actions were far from normal. It was odd and pitiful, and she certainly deserved it. So it's not like I said anything wrong. And if she thinks getting her friends to text me and tell me that I'm insensitive for saying what I did will make me apologize to her, she's mistaken. She needs to realize that someone had to put her in her place, and that someone had to be me, since she still had the nerve to come to my house and ask for aid after everything that occurred to me as a result of her actions. Of course, I don't blame her alone. My parents were both at fault, but the problem could have been avoided if she had used some common sense. I had to work really hard to be where I am now, and I will not give away a single dollar to someone who does not deserve it. In my opinion. Even if her business is struggling, she is still able to operate it. She can make the most of her situation. There's no reason for her to act like she's a charity case, in my opinion. My parents, and even my sister, have always believed that they should be doing well. When they reach a rough patch, they start acting like maniacs, and it looks like they're going to lose everything the following day. They, in my opinion, lack fighting spirit, and I'm pleased I'm not one of them. I say this because, even when I was in middle school, I recall my father losing his job because the company where he worked was experiencing some sort of crisis that I cannot recall. Anyway, everyone in my family completely lost their heads, and my father ended up borrowing a lot of money from our grandparents. To be clear, my parents had their own saving, and my mother was also working at the time, so there was no reason to fear. But yeah, I have no idea why they did it. And the odd part is that they never bothered to repay the money they borrowed. I think they didn't take it seriously because they were just getting it from my grandparents. And it appears that they're doing the same thing again. But this time, it's my sister's business that is suffering. But unlike my grandparents, I don't feel obligated to aid her. She has the option of dealing with it on her own or seeking assistance from someone else, as I am not particularly interested. Update 2. So, last month, my family came up at my home, and Emily's friends began sending me messages saying that I had been insensitive and that I should apologize to. I didn't, obviously. After that, I had no communication with them for several weeks, and I was also quite busy at work. I still had other gigs. Last night, I returned home about 2 a.m. Weary, but that's just when my folks decided to call me. They must have used a burner phone as I couldn't recognize the number. I assumed it was a work phone call, so I answered it, and as soon as I did, my parents informed me that they had considered it and chosen to take my sister out of their lives. I didn't know what to say because it was so unexpected. Furthermore, I had assumed that Emily, not my parents, required my assistance, so I didn't see what they stood to gain by shutting my sister out of their lives. Anyway, I told them it was excellent news, but I still didn't want anything to do with them because of how they had treated me in the past. It wasn't something I could forgive and forget so quickly. I know it wasn't that soon, but it didn't matter. I didn't want to speak with my folks. I was content with my life, despite having no contact with my family, and I don't believe anyone in my position will ever be able to move on from what had occurred. If I had had a horrible connection with them from the start and then they kicked me out when I was 19, I might have found it easier to accept. But it all came as such a shock to me that I was unable to deal with it emotionally for a long time, and now that I have accepted it, I don't want them back in my life, so I made it very plain to them. I informed them that their relationship with Emily didn't worry me because I didn't want to be in any kind of relationship with them, and that was my final decision. I was about to hang up when my mother interrupted me and told me that they had done what I had wanted. Therefore, I needed to be there for them and couldn't make excuses like this. I couldn't understand what they were saying, so I asked them to elaborate, and they told me that they had assumed that I had obviously read out that letter because I wanted them to know the truth about Emily's request to kick me out and realised that they had been duped. And they were correct in that regard, but they were dreadfully wrong afterwards. Apparently, they had come to believe that the only reason I wanted them to know that they had been duped was so that they could cut Emily out of their lives, and then I would be willing to rebuild my relationship with them and even help them out in the future now that they were retired. I was perplexed because I had not hinted at anything, and if they had begun to believe something like this, it was entirely on them, not on me. So I assured them I hadn't given them any signals, but my parents yelled at me, claiming I had been deceiving them, and now I had to swear to help them whenever they needed it in the future. Apparently, they had been spending a lot of money to help Emily pay her expenses and raise her son, so they were concerned that they hadn't saved enough money for retirement. They didn't have the choice of going back, so they had to rely on their other daughter, and they were furious that I refused to assist them. I have no idea what was wrong with my parents, but it was insane. So I decided to hang up on them while they were discussing how they expected me to assist them, and then I blocked that number. I've decided that I'm not going to accept calls from any numbers that I don't recognize right away, and I may even install some apps to help me block unrecognized phone numbers because I'm so sick of my family right now. I just don't want to be approachable to them. I've also discussed it with my grandparents, and they believe believe I'm correct in cutting them out of my life and refusing to allow them to contact me. My personal life has pretty much gone south since I opened the door the other day. I suppose I should not have opened the door to my apartment at all, which would have spared me a lot of difficulty because it now feels like they are glued to me and refuse to leave me alone. Update 3. The funniest thing happened today, and I feel compelled to tell it. So it's been 3 weeks since my parents last contacted me, and they thankfully did not try to contact me again after I blocked them, with the exception of an email they sent a week later saying that they would still cut Emily out of their lives completely if and only if I promised to take care of them in the future. Honestly, I think it's quite sad that they're prepared to cut her out of their lives because it demonstrates that they can't be faithful to even one of their daughters. They are terrible parents, and I can't feel bad about what I did today because all 3 are as bad. Anyway, I hadn't spoken with them in 3 weeks, and I was really busy. But today, at 9 a.m., I was reading through my emails and noticed that I had received one from Emily. She had been extremely arrogant and pompous in that one, claiming that she was willing to forgive me for what I had said about all of this being her fault, and that she had earned it since she knew it was coming from a place of bitterness and hate. Even though I had not apologized for anything, she was able to find forgiveness in her heart for me, since she was surrounded by love, including her friends and family. Whatever happens, she will always have her parents and those who loved her, no matter who departed. And I was just jealous because I would never have that. She was bragging about her support system, which included our parents, so I believed she had no idea they were trying to cut her off so they could get on my good side, because I'm currently on my route to success. And it was really funny, because all I had to do was snap a screenshot of the message my parents had sent me and send it to her as a response to the email she had sent me to demonstrate how much her parents loved her. It's really unfortunate because I'm confident that if they pooled all of their money, they'd be able to get by, and they have no excuse to be acting this way. But they're so selfish that even if they see someone doing marginally better in their lives, they feel compelled to take a piece of it. First, it was my grandparents, who are fairly well off and not stupid, so they understand how to manage their money. And now it's my turn because I'm performing better than my sister. It's clear to me that none of them value each other, and I believe they should know this. Update 4. Hello everyone. Several of you have requested an update on the issue with my family. I have nothing to do with them anymore, but from what I hear, there's a commotion in the family right now. The message I wrote, in which I exposed my parents' willingness to cut Emily out of their lives in exchange for a promise that I would help them in the future, ruined any relationship they had with each other. Emily, like an idiot, made a big deal about it on social media, claiming that she had always put her trust in the wrong people. But she had never anticipated her parents to be the same way because, well, they were her parents. I don't think she was wrong to do it. Nobody expects their parents to act like this. But I believe she should have seen it coming after they kicked me out. They have no devotion to anyone other than themselves. In response to her message, my parents posted another, claiming that she had been leeching off of them for several years and that they had been completely supportive of her. But there has to be a limit to everything. She cannot expect to live off her parents indefinitely. So they're currently embroiled in a social media battle, and there's a lot of commotion surrounding them, which isn't good for her flower company. At least my parents are still retired, but she has a reputation to consider, and she doesn't appear to care. She just cares about getting back at her parents, so I'm not shocked she's not succeeding right now. She is solely concerned with short-term ambitions, as she has been throughout her life. My grandparents and I are simply sitting back and watching the drama that's unfolding, because while I have nothing to do with it, I sort of do. Right now, both of them have had the foresight to keep me out of their posts, since they are presumably aware that if I am involved, all 3 of them will suffer greatly. Anyway, I don't want to speak up about any of this and give them the attention they want right now. It's clear to me that they merely want people to sympathize with them, but so far, no one in our family has fallen for it. In fact, people avoid them because of how they behave, which is so foolish that they are unaware that their own behaviors are having the opposite impact. But whatever, my life is fairly good right now, and that is all that counts to me.